The Mount Olympus shimmered under the golden sunlight, like a sparkling jewel on the horizon. The gods and goddesses gathered in great commotion, their laughter echoing as they prepared for the celebration of Zeus and Hera's wedding. Joyful music floated in the air, and dancers adorned with colorful flowers moved gracefully, creating a spectacle of colors and sounds. It was a grand event, and everyone was eager to honor the union of the king of the gods with the goddess of marriage. Meanwhile, in a distant clearing, the nymph Quelone rested peacefully under the shade of an ancient tree, oblivious to all the festivities. Her slender body was stretched out on the soft grass, and she gazed up at the sky, dreaming of a world without obligations or commitments. "Why should I care about these trivialities?" she thought, closing her eyes and feeling the gentle breeze caress her face. Life is much sweeter when lived in peace. Amid the celebration, the gods toasted to the new couple. Zeus, with his radiant countenance, raised a goblet of wine, his voice echoing with power and emotion. The union of two hearts is what maintains the balance of the universe. May our celebration be eternal, just like the love we have for each other. Hera, at his side, smiled tenderly, her gaze shining with joy. "I thank you all for being here to share this special moment. May the light of our love illuminate the skies." However, as the party unfolded, a dark cloud began to form on the horizon, as if the gods themselves sensed that something was amiss. The music continued, but a growing tension lingered in the air, like a portent of what was to come. None of the gods seemed to notice Quelone's absence, but Hermes, the swift messenger, began to feel troubled by the nymph's indifference. He had always considered her a peculiar and beautiful creature, but her carefree attitude now appeared as disdain for divine obligations. "Who invited Chelone to the party?" Hermes inquired, restless. "She cannot simply ignore such a grand event. This is an offense." With a determined look, Hermes decided it was time to act. After all, the nymph's indifference could not go unpunished. The celebration continued on Olympus, but a new path was about to be forged, and Chelone, in her carefreeness, hardly knew that her life was about to change forever. On Mount Olympus, the festive atmosphere was palpable, but Quelone's absence did not go unnoticed. Hermes, with his anxious gaze, approached Zeus and Hera, nervous. "My lord, something troubles my spirit. The nymph Chelone has not attended our grand wedding. It is a sign of disdain that we cannot ignore," he said, crossing his arms in a gesture of concern. Zeus, his features sternly illuminated by the golden light permeating the environment, frowned. "Her laziness is an offense to our union. We cannot allow this attitude to go unpunished. We must show Quelone that her actions have consequences." Hera, always attentive, nodded. "Perhaps we should send someone to bring her. A lesson in responsibility may be what she needs to understand the importance of our celebration." Hermes, burning with determination, decided he would be the one to deliver the message. "Leave it to me. I will make her understand. I cannot tolerate such disdain from one of our own," he declared as he prepared to descend to the mortal world. Upon arriving at the forest where Chelone often took refuge, Hermes found the nymph in a deep sleep, lying beneath the shade of a majestic tree. The sun filtered its rays through the leaves, creating a spectacle of light around her. "Chelone," he called, shaking her gently. "Wake up! Olympus is celebrating, and you are here, lost in your own world." But Chelone, still enveloped in her dreams, merely murmured and turned away, as if his words held no weight. Hermes, feeling frustration rising within him, repeated with more fervor, "Don't you understand? Occasionally, we need to leave our comfort zone. The world needs you." Exhausted by her indifference, Hermes pondered his nature. He had always been the messenger, the bearer of good news, but Quelone's attitude had pushed him to a limit. "If you do not care, then perhaps you need a more severe lesson," he declared, his voice firm and resolute. With a wave of his hand, he invoked the divine powers he possessed, and a bright light enveloped Chelone. "May the weight of your indifference become a burden you cannot ignore. From this day forward, you shall be a turtle, and you will carry your home on your back forever." The words echoed through the forest as Quelone found herself engulfed in a transformation that would change her life forever. The transformation of Quelone into a turtle was a devastating blow. As the forest around her vibrated with the songs of birds and the rustling of leaves, the new form of the nymph trapped her in a heavy shell that prevented her from moving with the lightness she once had. She felt confused and scared, trying to understand what had happened. "Why did this happen to me?" she thought, as her small legs struggled to drag the weight she now carried. Laziness, which had once been a way of life, had transformed into an unbearable burden. "This can't be real," Chelone murmured, her voice echoing low and trembling from within the shell. The world seemed so vast and unreachable now, and the nymph, used to being carried by the wind, found herself trapped in a body that felt strange to her. She tried to remember what her previous life was like, the lazy afternoons under the shade of the trees, and the comfort of having no obligations. But all of that now seemed so distant. Meanwhile, in Olympus, Hermes watched the celebration with a mix of satisfaction and a slight weight on his conscience. He leaned against a marble pillar and commented to Apollo, who was beside him, "I think the lesson was well applied, don't you think? Laziness cannot be tolerated among the gods." Apollo shook his head, a look of concern crossing his face. "Yes, but did she really deserve this? The punishment seems too harsh." Hermes frowned, reflecting on the words of the god of light. "Maybe, but if she doesn't learn, who will?" The indifference of Chelone still resonated in his mind, but a part of him began to question the severity of his decision. Back in the forest, Chelone pondered her new reality. With each movement she made, the shell grew heavier and heavier. "How can I live like this?" she grumbled, frustration growing within her. "I just wanted a little peace." Amid this internal struggle, she realized that even in the form of a turtle, she still had the ability to think and feel. With tremendous effort, she began to search for food, remembering how simple it was to feed on fallen fruits. The sweet smell of blackberries drew her in, but the task of reaching them seemed almost impossible now. As she tried to move, a gentle breeze caressed her shell, and for a moment, Chelone remembered what it was like to be free. "Maybe I can't go back to who I was, but I can learn to live this way," she decided, feeling a spark of determination arise within her. With each small step, a new idea began to take shape in her mind. Perhaps this transformation was not just a curse, but an opportunity to discover a new self. The forest pulsed with life, and Quelone, now in turtle form, felt the vibrant energy of her surroundings. With each step she took, the weight of her shell felt a little lighter as her determination grew. She passed through a clearing where a group of rabbits was playing, and upon noticing the turtle, one of them approached curious. "What happened to you, friend?" asked the rabbit, with big, inquisitive eyes. Quelone sighed, recalling her former life. I was punished for my indifference. Now I am a turtle, doomed to carry this shell forever." "That sounds heavy," exclaimed the rabbit, shaking its head. "But you don't have to do this alone. We will help you." Surprised, Quelone looked at the rabbits, who were already organizing themselves to assist her. With a joint effort, they pushed her along, making her journey lighter. That small act of solidarity made her feel something she hadn't felt in a long time, the joy of being connected to others. As she continued on her path, Chelone began to realize that the forest was teaching her more than she had imagined. With each new encounter, she learned about the importance of collaboration and teamwork. A majestic eagle, seeing the turtle and her new friends, flew down to them. "What brings such a special turtle to this place?" asked the eagle, landing gently on a nearby tree. "I am in search of redemption," Chelone replied, her voice firm despite the difficulties. "I want to understand the value of work and community." The eagle, impressed by the turtle's determination, said, "Then you are on the right path. Nature is wise, and we all have a role to play. You will discover your inner strength if you keep striving." Inspired, Quelone moved forward, each step bringing her closer to her true essence. On her journey, she felt stronger and more alive than ever. The shell that once seemed like a condemnation was now transforming into a symbol of resilience. With each challenge, she felt more connected to the forest and all the creatures that inhabited it. Meanwhile, on Mount Olympus, the gods began to feel the absence of the nymph. Hera, with a worried look, turned to Zeus and said, "I feel that something is not right. The forest seems different. Nature is unbalanced without Quelone." "I agree," replied Zeus, furrowing his brow. "We need to understand the consequences of our action. Quelone's indifference may have taught us more than we think." Hermes, who was present, felt a tightening in his heart upon hearing the words of the gods. He knew that his punishment, though deserved, had altered not only Quelone's fate, but also the balance of nature that all the gods revered. The messenger, reflecting on his actions, began to realize the depth of the connection between all beings. Thus, while Chelone moved forward on her journey of self-discovery, a new understanding of the value of work and unity blossomed among the gods. The fate of the nymph and the gods was intertwined, and the hope for a new balance hung in the air. Chelone, with her heavy shell on her back, walked slowly through the open field, her strong legs planted firmly in the fertile earth. The sun shone brightly, and the gentle breeze seemed to whisper promises of freedom. After months of reflection and learning, the turtle nymph felt a new determination pulsing within her. She had discovered strengths she had never imagined she possessed, and now she was ready to confront Hermes, the messenger of the gods who had punished her. Upon spotting Hermes, Chelone took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the past and the clarity of the present. "Hermes!" she shouted, her voice echoing across the field. The god turned, surprised to see the turtle approaching with a defiant stance. "What do you want, Quelone?" he asked, a smirk on his lips. She stopped in front of him, her gaze firm and resolute. "I demand an explanation for my punishment. You acted impulsively, without considering the consequences. I am not just a lazy creature. I am a being of the forest, and my indifference was a cry for help." Hermes frowned, sensing the intensity in her words. "You don't understand, Chelone. Your lack of commitment made me furious. I thought that transformation would make you see the importance of obligations." "Obligations?" Chelone replied, her voice now softer, yet firm. "Obligations can be a burden, but the laziness you saw in me was, in fact, a vulnerability. I was lost, unsure of how to connect with the world around me. You turned me into something I never wanted to be, but now I see that this journey made me stronger, more aware." Hermes looked at her with a mix of surprise and respect. He began to realize that the transformation had not only punished her, but also taught her. "Perhaps you are right," he admitted, his voice now more contemplative. "I acted without considering your pain. You have become stronger than I could have imagined." The wind blew between them, carrying a sense of change in the air. Chelone looked into Hermes' eyes, recognizing the man behind the god. "Laziness is not a vice, Hermes. It is a sign that something is wrong. We all struggle in different ways, and sometimes we need a push to truly see ourselves." Quelone's words resonated with Hermes, making him question his own nature. He had always been seen as the efficient messenger, but now, in the face of the raw truth from the nymph, he began to wonder if he too was escaping his own vulnerabilities. As Quelone and Hermes exchanged words in the open field, a shadow approached. It was Ares, the god of war, who observed the scene with a mischievous smile on his lips. He stepped forward, drawing the attention of both, and his imposing presence made the air around them vibrate with an inexplicable tension. "Ah, if it isn't the lazy one and her messenger," Ares exclaimed with a provocative tone. "What do we have here? A conversation about how indifference can be redemptive? What a charming idea." Quelone looked at him, her gaze now firm and challenging. "You have no right to mock me, Ares. Your influence was what led me to inaction. It was you who used my indolence as a tool to divert the gods' attention from their own problems." Ares raised an eyebrow, surprised, but soon his smile widened. "Ah, but what a graceful irony. I instigated your laziness, and now you rise as a heroine? This is amusing. The gods always seek scapegoats, and you, my dear, have become one of them." Hermes intervened, his voice carrying a tone of indignation. "Ares, you cannot simply shift the blame onto others. Quelone's laziness was a reflection of pain and vulnerability, not a threat. You manipulated this situation for your own benefit." Ares's eyes shone with disdain. "And what do you intend to do, Hermes? Defend laziness as a virtue? The gods need power, control. We cannot afford weaknesses." But Quelone's words, now more confident and determined, cut through the air. "If weakness is being human, then I prefer to be myself. I learned that true strength comes from unity and responsibility. We are not just individuals. We are part of a whole." Quelone's words resonated among those present, and something changed in the air. The gods, who had been divided until then, began to unite around her message. That was the true strength that Ares feared: unity and empathy. With a determined gesture, Hermes, now beside Chelone, turned to the other gods. "We need to act, not just in defense of Chelone, but to restore the balance that Ares has broken." Ares realized that his influence was waning, and a look of frustration crossed his face. "You cannot unite against me. I am the god of war, and we are the gods of harmony and nature," Chelone replied, her voice steady and clear. "Today, we choose the path of collaboration." Inspired by Quelone's courage and Hermes' indignation, the gods decided to unite against Ares. In a collective movement, they conjured a spell that enveloped Ares in light and power, punishing him for his manipulative actions. With Quelone's curse finally lifted, she felt light and renewed. Ares was temporarily banished, and the forest around them began to glow with new life. Chelone, now free, became a guardian of the forest, symbolizing the importance of responsibility and collectivity. As she looked towards the horizon, Chelone smiled. She was ready to face new challenges, no longer as an idle nymph, but as a vital force of nature, now connected with others and with her true purpose. The Olympus, radiant and balanced, reflected the renewed light that emanated from all the gods.